Welcome to the Valley Politics History Interviews. I'm Terry Christensen. Dan McCorquodale held public office in the Valley for 21 years, first as a county supervisor and later as a state senator. Back in 1972, when he first ran for county supervisor, Dan was distinctly an outsider. County government had long been dominated by a conservative old guard focused on rural areas. But Dan ran as a reformer on land use, social services, and more, and he soundly beat his old guard opponent. McCorquodale also introduced grassroots campaigning to Valley politics, knocking on thousands of doors to talk with voters in person. He was joined by hundreds of volunteers, all learning how to win an election without a lot of money. As subsequent elections brought allies to the Board of Supervisors, county government gradually became more liberal. The new majority got the county out of the development business, shifting responsibility for new growth to the cities. And although they had to deal with major budget cuts following the passage of Proposition 13 in 1978, over time, they greatly expanded social services. We aired our interview with Dan in two parts in 2015. Now, here it is in full. Dan McCorquodale, thanks for welcoming us into your home today.
Thank you. Thank you.
We want to talk to you about your political career, 22 years, first on the County Board of Supervisors, and then State Senate until you lost an election in 1994. The voters retired you because redistricting shifted your district over into the Central Valley and more conservative area, whereas you're a pretty famous flaming liberal locally.
Right.
So technically you retired in 1994. What have you been doing since?
Well, I've been doing quite a bit of photography. I took up photography after I was retired. I traveled. I've now been to 120 countries.
Wow.
I've made hope and goal of my life from childhood, and that was to drive from the Pacific to the Atlantic Ocean, and I did that. And then I have about 100 mouths that I have to feed every day. They're in 2 fish ponds that I have in the backyard. So I take care of the fish and dogs. We have 3 dogs and 2 cats, both who came from shelters.
Well, that's a big household. Yeah.
Right.
What about politics? Have you been involved in politics since?
Well, I try to stay out of a lot of too much politics, but I do occasionally endorse people, and if I feel that they're really going to do what I would view as a good job. And I have done work trying to get more parks in the East San Jose and to do something about the amount of high school dropouts and try to deal with the results of the war on drugs, which has succeeded in causing us to have to double the size of most of the prisons in the country. And hopefully we're going to see some changes in that.
Well, those are some big projects. Let's go back to when you first ran for county supervisor. What inspired you to run? What gave you the confidence to run? Were you relatively new to Santa Clara County when you ran?
I was very new to Santa Clara County, and I came here to start the educationally handicapped program in the Evergreen School District, and with good intentions of staying out of politics. I'd been in politics in San Diego County. I was on the council in Chula Vista and the first elected mayor when they changed to an elected mayor system. But I came here feeling like I was going to make education my career. And but I was concerned about the mental health issues and various others, and the incumbent had agreed to not build a mental health center in East San Jose, so that got me interested. And I became more interested and tried to find somebody to run against him. And we went through several possible candidates, and most of them didn't want to take a run at it. So finally I said, well, if I thought they should, maybe I should just try it. And so I ran, and then I became an educator for the larger part of Santa Clara County, not just the local school district.
Yeah, mental health was the issue that moved you then.
Yes.
That's a service the county is obligated to provide. A lot of people don't know really what the county does,
Right.
but that's a very important service. What was county politics like at the time? What was the board of supervisors like? This is 1972.
The board was heavily oriented towards the rural areas. They had very good representation in the rural areas.
Of course, county provides all the local services for
Right.
rural areas.
And but for social issues, the health department, the hospital, the social services, all of those were like just afterthoughts for them. We had two supervisors on that were pretty good that had come on not too long before me, Don Cortese and Victor Calvo.
Vic Calvo.
But they were interested, one in environment primarily, and the other one in the more social issues. And so they didn't accomplish too much. So it just seemed like it was the right time to try to swing the balance of that board, and that was what I set out to do.
And how did things change during your 10 years in office?
Well, it completely changed. The first 2 years that I was on, I was just there. That was about it. I could vote no, but that was about the only success I could have. But then Supervisor Dearden was elected, and that gave us 2 voices. And then on environmental issues, we could depend on Vic Calvo, and on social issues and transportation, we could depend on Don. So it sort of started switching the direction of the county. So we took over the transit system, started that. The citizens passed the 10 cents on the tax rate for parks, for the park system. We started the idea of multi-service centers in the various communities. We did some work with the courts to try to improve the speed of the courts, and it just became a more urban-oriented board of supervisors.
That's a lot of change. Another big change that happened while you were in office came in 1978 when Proposition 13 was passed. What kind of impact did that have on county government, and what do you think of Prop 13 today?
Well, Prop 13, I campaigned against it. It was the third time that I'd campaigned against Dan and his people. I was on the winning side on the first 2 times, but this one was the one that overwhelmed us because the property taxes were going up so fast at that time. So I didn't like it. I thought there were other ways that we should have been able to accomplish that. And the county was doing a pretty good job. We didn't take advantage of that increase in the assessed value of property for about the 3 elections before that, or 3 sessions before that. And so when Prop 13 came along, we were probably better able to, than most counties really, to handle it. Some counties were claiming they'd have to file bankruptcy.
To handle the reduction in revenues, because Prop 13 cut back local revenues by over 50%.
Right, and so we reduced our expenditures, but we did it over a period of time, and we still had some monies that were set into place by previously that couldn't be dealt with, bond issues and bond money and some of the others, so we were able to handle it. Today I think that it's such an inequity for people who have a home. Once they buy a home today, their property taxes are exorbitant, but when a piece of property is in the ownership of a corporation for years, generations, it still has the benefit of Prop 13, and that
low taxes.
Really ought to be changed, and somebody needs to take the bull by the horns and deal with it.
Well, you're retired, you have time.
Well, I talk about it a lot, but I did try to change it when I was in the legislature,
Yeah.
but was unable to do that.
It's
so.
a tough one. It's a tough one. I want to go back to 1972 again, because you've talked about some ways county government changed once you and others like Rod Diridon got elected, but I was around in 72, and I remember also that you changed the way local campaigns are done. What did you do in your campaign that was different from what had been done before and that took your opponent by surprise, I think?
Well, when I started the campaign, I realized that I was not going to have a lot of money, that the interest, special interest that might fund a campaign, I was going to be negative towards, and so they weren't going to fund me. And so I decided that I would start, and I started about a year and a half in advance of the election, walking door to door. And so by the time the fall election came, I had walked to every precinct once, and half the precincts the second time.
That's a lot of precincts and a lot of doors to knock on.
That was a lot of doors.
Thousands.
And the thing that was the best thing about that was not just that I walked door to door, but that people, seeing that how much I was walking, felt they could walk also. And so we just had literally probably 1,000 people or more that were doing door to door walking for me.
Yeah, I should confess to our viewers that I walked a couple of precincts for you at various times during your career.
So we spent very little money. I think in both elections, the primary and the general, I think we spent less than $20,000. And that was raised also by, our biggest fundraiser was a retired woman in Sunnyvale who didn't realize that you can't get on the phone and just call the precinct list and ask people to send money, and she did it. And so I think she raised about $2,000 of people sending in anything from, we got some checks that were $10 or $20, but we also got a lot of envelopes with, like, one particular, we got 42 cents. And I figured that guy just took that money, the change in his pocket, and put it in and sent it in. But she would talk to them, and they liked her, and so they would send in money. So we raised money everywhere we could.
So let's go back to your time at the County Board of Supervisors. What do you think was your greatest accomplishment during those 10 years?
Well, I think I opened up the county to the public, and that the public who hadn't paid much attention to the county started paying attention to it. One of the reporters at San Jose Mercury, who kept track of those types of things, told me that I voted no more times in the first year than the previous 10 years of the Board of Supervisors. And they didn't vote no because they would have a meeting ahead of time and then decide if it was somebody was controversial or somebody didn't want to hear it, they just put it over. So the crowd might show up, but then they would be told that, well, this is going to be held over for a period of time, be on the agenda future. Never telling them when it would be on the agenda. So people really didn't have a good image of the board. And then when somebody comes along and votes no, I always got my name in the paper because they'd say the Board of Supervisors approved this on a 4-1 vote. McCorquodale voted no. And then they'd see that, and so they started taking some interest in it. And then on appointments, I started appointing people that had never been from groups that had very seldom have ever been on boards and commissions.
This is for county boards and commissions, yeah.
I appointed Honda.
Mike Honda, our congressman, yeah.
Board. I appointed Hispanics. I made sure that we were getting Hispanics on all the boards and commissions in the county. And again, the other supervisors felt that they had to do the same type of thing. And then people took interest. Not only had Hispanics not been on the board, on the commissions, they'd hardly ever, if ever, ran for the board. And then we end up with Ron Gonzalez on the board, Blanca Alvarado on the board. When there was a vacancy in Calvo's seat, we appointed a woman to the Board of Supervisors.
Jerry Steinberg?
Steinberg. So we had a good transportation person, good environmental person. It made a good switch over. That was, I think, the thing I felt best about. I did a lot of other issues, but those were just things that came along.
So Dan, what was your biggest disappointment during your 10 years as a county supervisor?
I think if I look at the issues that I lost on at some point, I got most of them back as time went by. But the thing that I was least able to do was to get the county to spend some of the property tax money that was going for parks in East San Jose. And they would just never take an interest, it seemed like, in doing something for the most underparked area in the county. And finally got money for the Penitencia Creek Park by tying that to the Grant Ranch. The majority of the board wanted to buy Grant Ranch.
Up in the East Foothills.
Right, but Rod didn't want to buy it, so it was, with me, it would be a 4-to-1 vote, which the charter would allow. It wasn't on any plan, so you had to have the 4 votes. So I wouldn't vote for it unless it included money for a park in the flatlands and East, and I gave them the census tracts that it needed to be in. And so out of that we got Penitencia Creek and preserved, and now unless the Corps of Engineers comes in and destroys it, it's going to be one of the main year-round streams in the county without having itself too disrupted, not being a straight channel with concrete.
You also served 3 terms in the state senate. Which was the more rewarding job, county supervisor or state senator?
I think the higher you go, the less rewarding it is. I think I really enjoyed the Board of Supervisors a lot more. I like many of the things that I was able to do in the Senate, but with the Board of Supervisors, you know, you just 2 other people and you can do it.
2 other votes out of the 5.
2 other votes, right. But in the Senate, you've got to go through committees, you've got to go through the House of Origin, you've got to do the same in the other house. And we had very few people that we would call lobbyists in the Board of Supervisors chambers there. In the Senate, every interest that you can imagine has a lobbyist. And so you think you've got a bill that doesn't have any problems, and all at once out of the wild comes some lobbyist that's fighting your bill and trying to keep it from going. And it just, today, it's become such a race for money. People have to raise all that money. And that causes people to do strange things. I mean, some of the people that have been charged with embezzlement and so forth, you know, I knew them, and I don't think they were that kind of people.
Yeah.
But now they've got to get that money. They've got to get money, and because they want to run for another election or another office, or
they have to raise it for the party.
Right, right. And so, or the leadership.
Party leadership, yeah.
So, but I really liked being on the city council and being mayor, and I think there's more fun in those than there is as you get higher. And you get to be Congress or in the United States Senate, how you vote decide whether there's a war going on anywhere. So it just, I don't think there's as much fun the higher up you go.
The higher levels.
Yeah.
So what's your advice for young people thinking about a career in politics today? Run for local office? Do local politics?
I think that they should work in campaigns. I think that's good.
Yes, great
and
experience.
That's good. Do internships.
Yes.
Like
your office hosted dozens of interns.
And a lot of those people went on and have run for office. And then don't worry too much about whether you're going to win or not. You just go there concentrating on winning, you're going to probably goof it up. Go there and think that this is an issue in my life that I'm going to do, and it's just like learning to ski or to swim or anything else. I'm going to learn about politics this way. And whether you ever run for office or whether you just work in the public sector, it's good to know how decisions are made and how people make decisions and how they feel about things.
That's great advice. Dan McCorquodale, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
For other interviews with the leaders and activists who shaped the history of San Jose and Santa Clara County, look for the Valley Politics History Interviews on YouTube.